Imagine attending a wedding where there is no music, no microphones, and no spoken vows. And yet, it's one of the most emotional ceremonies you've ever felt. This is the story of a couple who redefined what love sounds like by removing sound altogether. Before we begin, if you enjoy deep, emotional stories that show love from a completely new angle, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us keep sharing meaningful stories like this one. Now, let's begin. Lena Brooks was 34 years old and had spent most of her life explaining herself to the world. Not with words, but with patience. She was deaf, proudly so, and worked as a primary school teacher at a specialized learning center for deaf and hard-of-hearing children just outside Vancouver. Her classroom was colorful, expressive, and alive with motion. Hands moved constantly. Faces told stories. Silence, to Lena, was never empty. One rainy autumn morning, everything shifted. The school administrator walked in with a tall man Lena had never seen before. He had dark hair, kind eyes, and an unsure posture, like someone entering unfamiliar territory. "This is Evan Cole," the administrator signed carefully. "He's subbing for the next few weeks." Evan smiled awkwardly and signed hello, his movements a little stiff but clearly practiced. Lena noticed immediately. He wasn't fluent, but he was trying, and that mattered. Over the next few days, they found themselves sharing small moments, organizing materials, helping students calm down after emotional lessons, exchanging looks of shared understanding when a child finally grasped a concept after struggling. One afternoon, after the last student had left, Evan stayed behind to help Lena rearrange desks. The classroom lights hummed softly. Their hands moved slowly, deliberately. "You're good with them," Lena signed. Evan shrugged, smiling. "They're good with me. They don't pretend." That sentence lingered. They started eating lunch together, then walking to the bus stop, then staying late just to talk. What surprised Lena wasn't attraction. It was ease. There was no need to explain why certain spaces were exhausting, or why constant lip reading drained energy, or why eye contact mattered so deeply. Evan understood without footnotes. He had lost his hearing at 11 after an illness. Years of speech therapy and mainstream schooling had taught him how to survive in a hearing world. But with Lena, he didn't need to survive. He could exist. Their relationship unfolded quietly but intensely. Weekend walks turned into long conversations at cafes where they chose seats carefully, so light hit faces just right. They talked about childhood frustrations, about feeling invisible, about how silence had shaped them differently but equally. One night, while sitting on Lena's apartment floor surrounded by takeout containers, Evan signed something that made her pause. "I've never dated another deaf person before. I didn't know it could feel like this." Lena felt her chest tighten. She nodded slowly. "Neither did I. By winter, they were inseparable. By the following year, Evan proposed, not with a ring at first, but with a question written across a small lightboard he'd built himself. "Will you build a life with me?" Lena cried before she answered. They officially got engaged a few weeks later, but almost immediately the wedding conversations felt strange. Friends and family were excited. Suggestions poured in. DJs, playlists, speeches, toasts. Lena and Evan listened politely. Then, one night, after another long discussion, they sat on their couch in silence. Evan finally signed. "Why does it feel like everyone else's wedding?" Lena exhaled sharply. "Because it is," she replied. "They're planning something we don't experience." That was the moment everything changed. They didn't want a ceremony adapted for deaf people. They wanted a ceremony designed from the ground up for how they experienced the world. No microphones, no music blasting through speakers they couldn't hear. No awkward pauses while interpreters stood off to the side. They wanted vibration, light, movement, presence. They began searching for venues with one rule: the space had to feel alive without sound. After weeks of searching, they found it. A renovated industrial loft in East Vancouver. Polished concrete floors, exposed beams, high ceilings, empty walls waiting to be transformed. The moment they stepped inside, Evan removed his shoes and stomped lightly. The floor answered back with a deep, soft vibration. He looked at Lena, eyes wide. "This," he signed, "this can feel us." From that day on, planning became an act of creativity. They mapped the venue like an art installation. Not rows of chairs, but a circle. Not a stage, but shared space. Lena drew designs late into the night. Gloves that glowed when hands came together. Tables that pulsed gently like breathing. Soft lights that changed color with movement. Evan focused on tactile experiences. Floor panels that responded to pressure. Sculptures guests could touch, each sending different vibrations through the body. They weren't just planning a wedding. They were building a world. As the date approached, some guests were confused. "No music at all?" one cousin asked. "How will we know when to clap?" another wondered. Lena smiled patiently and signed, "You'll feel it." June arrived warm and bright. On the morning of the ceremony, Lena stood barefoot in the preparation room, feeling the subtle hum beneath her feet as the venue systems powered on. She placed her hand over her heart and closed her eyes. This was hers. This was theirs. Evan waited in the main space, lights reflecting softly off the walls. Guests entered slowly, their curiosity growing with each step. The floor greeted them with a gentle vibration, like a welcome. When Lena entered, there was no music cue. Instead, the lights shifted. People looked up. Then they felt it. A low, steady pulse beneath their feet, sinking everyone into the same moment. They stood in a circle, no officiant speaking aloud. Just signed words projected softly onto translucent panels around them. When Lena and Evan signed their vows, the floor responded with subtle rhythmic waves. Their words weren't heard, but they were felt. Some guests cried without knowing why. Others held hands tighter. No one checked their phone. No one felt bored. Everyone was present. At one point, Evan paused mid-vow, overcome with emotion. Lena reached out instinctively, their glowing gloves lighting up as their hands met. The room responded with a gentle surge of light, like the space itself was breathing with them. After the ceremony, there were no clinking glasses. Instead, guests were given small cups filled with lightly sparkling water. When raised, the rims shimmered softly. Tiny edible spheres floated on top, popping gently when tasted. People laughed in surprise. Children ran to the vibration sculptures, pressing their palms against them, feeling invisible music. Hearing guests began to understand something new. Silence wasn't empty. It was full. As the night went on, guests danced, not to sound, but to feeling. Two large vibration platforms pulsed beneath the couple's feet as they moved together, laughing, grounded, connected. Evan leaned close and signed, "They get it." Lena looked around the room, people touching walls, smiling at each other, feeling instead of listening. "Yes," she signed back. "They finally do." Later that night, when the venue had emptied and the lights dimmed, Lena and Evan sat alone on the floor, exhausted and glowing. Evan signed slowly, thoughtfully. I spent years thinking our world was smaller because it was quieter. Lena rested her head on his shoulder. And now? He smiled. Now I know it was just deeper. The lesson of their wedding wasn't about silence or sound. It was about building spaces where love doesn't need translation. Sometimes the most powerful experiences aren't the ones you hear. They're the ones you feel. The morning after the wedding arrived quietly, but not gently. Sunlight slipped through the tall windows of the loft where Lena and Evan had spent their first night as a married couple. Dust floated in the air, glowing softly, just like the lights from the night before still echoing in their bodies. Lena woke first. She lay still for a moment, one hand resting on Evan's chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. No alarms, no voices, just presence. Her lips curved into a small smile. Then reality crept in. The messages. Her phone buzzed again and again on the concrete floor beside the mattress. She picked it up, squinting. Texts, emails, social media notifications. She didn't need to read them to know. Their wedding had spread far beyond that room. Videos had been shared. Short clips of glowing hands, pulsing floors. Guests crying without sound. Someone had captioned it. I've never felt a wedding before. Lena nudged Evan gently. He opened his eyes, confused for a second, then smiled when he saw her. Morning, he signed sleepily. She handed him the phone. He scrolled. His expression shifted. Surprise, pride, and then something else. Concern. They're watching, he signed. Yes, Lena replied. All of them. By noon, their story was everywhere. Local blogs, lifestyle pages, morning shows asking for interviews. People praised their creativity, their courage, their beautiful silence. But not all reactions were kind. Some comments stung. So dramatic. Why exclude sound? Isn't this just attention-seeking? Evan read one comment twice, jaw tightening. They still don't understand, he signed. Lena took a deep breath. No, she agreed. But they're closer than before. That belief would be tested sooner than she expected. 3 days later, Evan received an email from a large event production company. They wanted to collaborate. Not quietly, not respectfully. They wanted to package the experience. Silent weddings, the email read, are the next big trend. Lena stared at the screen, her hands going cold. They want to sell us, she signed slowly. Evan nodded. And they don't even see the problem. They met with the company anyway, curious and cautious. The office was sleek, glass walls, perfect lighting. The meeting room buzzed faintly with sound they couldn't hear, but could sense vibrating through the table. A woman in a sharp blazer spoke rapidly while an interpreter signed beside her. We think this could be revolutionary, the woman said. A sensory wedding package. Minimal sound, maximum impact. It's very Instagrammable. Lena's face hardened. This wasn't a theme, she signed firmly. It was our life. The woman blinked, clearly thrown off. Well, of course, she said aloud. But imagine how many couples would love this aesthetic. Evan leaned forward, hands steady, but eyes intense. You're asking to borrow something we built out of necessity, he signed, and turn it into decoration. The room fell awkwardly silent. The meeting ended politely but coldly. As they walked out, Lena felt something twist in her chest. They didn't hear us, she signed. Evan squeezed her hand. They heard, he replied. They just didn't listen. That moment changed everything. Instead of pulling back, Lena and Evan leaned forward. They began hosting small workshops at community centers. Not weddings, conversations. They invited hearing people to experience silence intentionally. Phones off, shoes off, hands open. Some people lasted 5 minutes. Others stayed for hours. A young woman once broke down crying afterward. "I didn't realize how loud my life was," she typed on her phone. Another man admitted, "I thought silence was scary. Turns out I was just scared of slowing down." But not everyone welcomed these spaces. At one workshop, a man stood up abruptly and left, shaking his head. "This is uncomfortable," he said loudly as he walked out. Lena watched him go, sadness flickering across her face. Evan signed gently. Growth often is. Meanwhile, their personal lives were shifting too. Lena's parents, both hearing, had attended the wedding with mixed emotions. They were proud, but unsettled. A week after the wedding, they invited Lena and Evan over for dinner. The table was set neatly, candles flickered. Familiar smells filled the room. Halfway through the meal, Lena's mother reached out and touched her hand. "I didn't know," she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I didn't know how much we've asked you to translate yourself your whole life." Lena's throat tightened. Her father nodded, eyes glossy. "The wedding," he added. "It wasn't quiet. It was loud in a different way." Lena signed, hands trembling slightly. "That's all we ever wanted you to see." That night, she cried in Evan's arms. Not from pain, but from release. Still, the pressure mounted. Emails continued. Requests, invitations to speak on panels that framed them as inspirational objects instead of complex people. Evan struggled more than Lena. He had spent years trying to blend in, to not be noticed. Now, attention followed them everywhere. One evening, after turning down yet another request, he signed, "I don't want us to become a symbol." Lena nodded. "I don't either." They sat in silence, the comfortable kind. But underneath it, a question pulsed. What now? The answer came unexpectedly. A message arrived from a small school in a rural town hours away. A teacher had seen the wedding video and recognized something familiar. "We have deaf students here," the email read. "But no resources, no community. Would you consider visiting?" Lena read it twice. Her hands began to shake, not with fear, but excitement. "Yes," she signed immediately. Evan smiled. "Yes," he agreed. The school gym was small and worn. The floor creaked. The walls were plain. But when the students entered, eyes wide and curious, the space transformed. Lena and Evan didn't bring technology this time. They brought presence. They taught the children how to feel rhythm through stomping and clapping together, how to tell stories with faces and hands, how silence could be shared, not lonely. One boy lingered after everyone else left. He looked up at Evan, then signed shyly. "Can deaf people get married?" Evan knelt down to his level, smiling softly. "Yes," he signed, "and however we want." The boy grinned so wide it hurt. Lena turned away, wiping her eyes. That night, as they drove home under a sky full of stars, Evan signed something that stayed with her. "Maybe the wedding wasn't the point," he said. "Maybe it was the door." Lena nodded. "And we're just walking through it." But doors, once opened, don't always close quietly. As their influence grew, so did resistance. An online debate erupted after a major magazine published an article about their wedding. Comment sections exploded. Some accused them of romanticizing disability. Others argued they were excluding hearing people. Lena read the comments late into the night, her chest heavy. "Did we do something wrong?" she signed softly. Evan took her hands, grounding her. "No," he signed. "We did something honest. And honesty makes people uncomfortable." Still, the doubt lingered, until something unexpected happened. A hearing couple reached out. They weren't deaf. They weren't influencers. They were parents of a deaf child. "We saw your wedding," the message said, "and for the first time we stopped seeing our daughter's future as limited." Lena stared at the screen, tears blurring her vision. Evan pulled her into a hug. That was the moment they understood. Impact isn't always loud. Sometimes it spreads quietly from one heart to another, changing the shape of what people believe is possible. And this was only the beginning. Their journey was no longer just about them. It was becoming something much bigger. And ahead of them waited new challenges, deeper conflicts, and choices that would test not just their love, but their purpose. The silence around them felt different now. It felt alive with what was coming next. The silence before change always feels heavier than the change itself. Lena felt it the morning she woke up with a strange mix of excitement and fear sitting in her chest. The kind of feeling that tells you life is about to shift again, whether you're ready or not. The messages hadn't stopped. Schools, community centers, parents, deaf adults who had never seen themselves reflected in something joyful before. Hearing people asking thoughtful questions instead of shallow ones. But alongside the gratitude came exhaustion. Evan noticed it before Lena did. One evening, he watched her reread the same email 3 times, her shoulders tense. "You don't have to carry all of this," he signed gently. Lena sighed, letting the phone fall onto the couch. "I know," she signed back. "I just don't want to disappear again." That word, again, hung between them. They both knew what it meant. Years of being present but unseen, included but not centered, celebrated, but only when convenient. A few weeks later, they were invited to speak at a large cultural conference. This time, the framing felt different. The organizers asked what they needed. Interpreters were placed thoughtfully. Lighting was adjusted. The staged layout was circular, not hierarchical. For the first time, Lena didn't feel like a guest in someone else's world. When Evan finished signing his portion, the room stayed completely still. No applause. Then slowly, one by one, people raised their hands and waved them gently in the air. The deaf applause Lena had known all her life. Her breath caught. Evan's eyes shone. In that moment, something healed quietly inside both of them. But growth invites pressure. A nonprofit organization reached out with a proposal. Funding, resources, national reach. On paper, it was everything they had hoped for. Then Lena read the fine print. Their story would be streamlined. Their message simplified. Their wedding framed as a symbol of overcoming. She closed the document, hands shaking. "They want us inspiring," she signed to Evan, "but not honest." Evan nodded slowly. "And honesty is the whole point." Turning it down was terrifying. They weren't wealthy. They both worked demanding jobs. Visibility didn't pay rent. That night, they argued for the first time since the wedding. Not loudly, not cruelly, but deeply. "What if this is the only chance?" Evan signed, frustration breaking through. "And what if we lose ourselves?" Lena signed back, tears forming. Silence followed, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that asks questions. They didn't sleep much. By morning, Evan made coffee and slid a note across the table. Handwritten, simple. "Whatever we build it together, or not at all." Lena exhaled, the tension loosening. She took his hand and squeezed it. "Together," she signed. They declined the offer. And something unexpected happened. Others stepped in. Smaller organizations, deaf-led groups, grassroots educators, people who didn't want polish, only truth. Slowly, intentionally, Lena and Evan helped create a traveling sensory experience. Not a show, not an exhibit, a space, a place where sound was optional but feeling was essential. Each city added something new, a texture, a rhythm, a story. They never branded it with their names. It didn't belong to them anymore. Months later, on the anniversary of their wedding, they returned to the same industrial loft. No guests, no lights, no installations. Just them, barefoot on the concrete floor. Evan signed, smiling. "Do you miss it?" Lena thought for a moment. "I miss the feeling," she signed. "But I'm living it." They stood there quietly, hands intertwined. Somewhere in the city, cars passed. People talked. Music played. But in that space, silence wrapped around them like an old friend. Lena realized something then. Their wedding hadn't been about rejecting sound. It had been about choosing authenticity, about refusing to shrink love into someone else's expectations, about trusting that the way they experienced the world was not a limitation, but a language. Later that night, Lena received one final message. It was from the young boy at the rural school. A photo showed him standing proudly in front of his class, hands mid-sign, a wide smile on his face. The caption read, "I told them today I want a wedding you can feel." Lena handed the phone to Evan. Neither of them signed anything. They didn't need to. The silence said enough. And that is the quiet truth of this story. Love doesn't need volume to be powerful. It doesn't need approval to be real. Sometimes the most meaningful connections aren't heard at all. They're felt, deep in the places words can't reach. And when we finally stop translating ourselves for the world, we give the world a chance to truly understand us.